So at the beginning of the year, a lot of business owners start thinking about selling their business. Businesses that have growing sales are awesome, but when sales are flat or declining, it's usually a signal that something needs to be diagnosed before moving forward. Today, I'm joined by Jason Kelleghan. He's the owner of Sandler Training, a global leader in sales and sales leadership training. Jason works closely with small and medium sized businesses to help them grow their sales systems and grow their revenue the right way. So, Jason, thanks so much for being with us today. So, what's the uncomfortable truth about building a sales team that most business owners don't want to hear?
Oh, we're going to get right into it. So, the uncomfortable truth, Antoinette, if I could be direct, is that it's almost always the owner that is holding their sales team back. Usually, it's not the product, it's not the market, it's not the reps. The owner gets in the way. And what happens is when I talk to business owners, they'll tell me things like, my team isn't closing, I need better salespeople. And as we get talking, what I realize is they need to get out of the way. So
Mhm.
I have a client, I'll call him Steve. He wanted to sell his business, and the offers were well below what he thought the business was worth. And the reason why is because it was the Steve show. He had no process, no predictability. He was meddling in every single deal. And as a result, he was selling Steve. He wasn't selling a business. So if businesses really want to increase their enterprise value, the owner needs to learn how to build systems and build a team so they could get out of the way so they actually don't hold it back. That's the uncomfortable
Interesting.
truth.
Yeah, interesting. And I see that a lot where the owner is the salesperson. So, if sales are flat, where do you usually look first with a business owner?
Mm. So it's a good question. It's hard to answer without having a lot of context. So I'll just share some of the things that I typically find when we get to flat sales. Almost always, again, it's a leadership issue. So one is there's no real process. So if I ask them to walk me through step by step what their sales process looks like, what's the exit criteria for each step? What questions do you ask? What I find is that there's really not a process. It's a hope strategy, which leads to flat sales. Other times it's weak qualification. So they have a good pipeline, but it's fluffy. There's not actually a lot of real deals in there. They're selling to anybody with a heartbeat. They get happy ears. So qualification's really weak. Accountability becomes weak, where managers become glorified scorekeepers, and they look at lagging indicators, which tells them what's happening behind them, and they're not really looking at leading indicators. Sometimes the salespeople are order takers, meaning that they closed a lot of deals when the market was good. Maybe the market's changed a little bit, and now they're kind of waiting for the market to come to them rather than going after new business. And then the last piece I look at when sales are flat is what's the culture? And often the culture is soft. Now, what I don't mean is I certainly don't want companies to have a boiler room type of culture, but they should be pushing back when prospects tell them to call them in 6 months. They should be asking the tough questions. They should be gutsy. And when that's not happening, it's a sign of weak culture. And that's often why sales are flat as well. So a lot of reasons there, but those are the places I would look.
There's a lot of reasons there. If you were going to say what number one is of all of those, what would you choose?
Yeah, that's why I led with it, which is the no process. No process almost leads to no predictability.
In terms of marketing and sales problems, how can you tell if an owner has a marketing problem or if they have a sales process problem?
Yeah, great question. So let's quickly define what each one is because marketing is pretty broad. So I assume that when you and I are talking about marketing, we're probably talking about lead generation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And lead generation is top of the funnel, and you basically measure it by how many new opportunities are coming in through your marketing channels. And that could be your website, it could be Facebook ads, it could be old school advertising, radio ads, commercials, etc. And almost everyone I talk to tells me they have a lead problem. They could always use more leads. But here's how you know whether or not you have a lead problem or if you have a sales problem is you got to look at your closing rate and you got to benchmark it against what other companies similar to you are doing and are doing it well. Because it's like this. I like to fly fish and I'm trying to talk my wife into going to Montana this summer. And let's say we're going to drive there and let's say my car gets 10 miles to the gallon. Well, that means I'm going to have to stop at the gas station quite a bit to put more gas in the tank. But if I optimize my car and I'm now getting 40 miles per gallon, it's less trips to the gas station.
Mhm.
So what that's equivalent to is having a low closing rate. The lower your closing rate, the more leads you're going to need. And so that's how people attack their marketing problem is I need more leads. Well, the truth is you're not being efficient with those leads, which is why you need more. So where I'd start first is my sales process optimized to give me a close rate that's benchmarked against my competitors and does well? And
Mhm.
if it's not, that's where I'm looking. And once my close rate's optimized, then I look at putting more gas in the tank by bringing in more leads. I hope that makes
Yeah,
sense.
it does make sense, and it's going to be different for each kind of business.
Absolutely.
What does a sales process need in order for it to work across a team and not just for one great salesperson?
Yeah, this is going to be a common theme, I feel like, throughout our interview. Is again, it comes back to process because personality doesn't scale. There are a number of salespeople, and there are certainly a number of owners that could sell just by the sheer force of their personality.
Mhm.
But those people are hard to find. And if they're really good, they're hard to keep because they're going to be in demand. So, what you really want to look as a business owner is can I take somebody who can execute a process, not just sell by sheer force of personality?
So it's all about a system that they put in place that can be replicated across different people, different individuals.
That's right. And I bring up this idea of system, and a very easy way to look at it is look at McDonald's. When McDonald's came into existence, there are a lot of places you could get a burger from. The reason why McDonald's became a multi-billion corporation is because they were able to systematize it. So rather than finding great cooks, they could put people that could execute a process into place and still have a repeatable, predictable way of doing business. Sales is no different. You don't need to necessarily go out and find the best cook. You need to have the best system. And then you're just finding people that can execute versus people that just have amazing, charming, charismatic
Yeah.
personalities.
Jason, one of the most common problems that I find is that the business is run and managed by the owner. The owner is actually doing all of the sales and they're great at it. But having someone else do what they're doing is oftentimes a challenge. How do you address that?
Hopefully I'm not going to bore your listeners here. It starts with process, right? Usually that owner doesn't have a process. What happens is the owner is so passionate about their business and they know their business so well. They know the ins and outs, they're experts in what they do, that enables them to sell. And that's great. The problem is it doesn't scale. You're not going to bring in a rep and instantly be able to share with them the expertise that you have that came from years and years of development. And the rep's probably not going to be as passionate about the business because they're not
Yeah.
the owner. You're never going to be able to replicate the qualities that make an owner successful into a rep. So there has to be something more there, which again goes back to what's the process you're going to put in place
Mhm.
to replicate your effectiveness with not necessarily having the same passion and the same expertise that you bring to the table.
Jason, what role do you think that the business owner should be playing in the sales process if they want to someday exit the business?
Yeah, they should be building the process, they should be managing the process. And if they are in the process, if they don't have a sales manager, meaning that they're hiring salespeople and they're reporting directly to them, which there's pros and cons to this, they should be coaching not on outcome, but on process.
Mhm.
All too often, an owner will look at their salesperson and say, why didn't this close? Well, that's looking at the outcome. A good owner will look at it and say, let's walk through the process step by step and figure out what didn't quite work. And if they're
Do
seeing trends, they can make adjustments that way.
do you think they need to hire to start out with a sales manager or a salesperson?
So this is the world according to Jason. Doesn't mean it's fact. It's just what I've seen work. I think your first sales hire should be a salesperson, not a sales manager. You're going
Mhm.
to get a bigger return on the investment. And as the owner, there really should be no reason why you need somebody in the middle managing one person. If I could add something to this, if there's budget there, and I realize there's budget constraints, if you're hiring your first salesperson, you should almost always hire in two.
Oh,
And
okay.
and
Talk more about that.
I wasn't very good at science, but I understand the scientific method, right? And the scientific method is you want to change one thing and then see what results it produces. And we want to take the scientific method to growing and scaling our
Mhm.
business. And if we hire one person and they don't work out, well, maybe it was that individual. Maybe it was something about the process. Maybe it was something about the product. Maybe it was something about the management style. But if we only hire one person, we don't learn anything. It could be any of those things.
Hmm.
If we hire two people, we could actually learn something. If one works out and one doesn't, you know it's a personality issue, and you have one good person that you now have qualities that you could go look for in your next candidate. If both don't work out, you know there's something wrong with your process, your product, something else in place, and you could go fix it. So it's worth the investment because you'll learn. And guess what? If they both work out, you'll end up making more money.
Interesting. I like that. It's like in marketing, you have A/B testing. You
Yes.
compare that. Okay, let's talk about the difference between revenue and predictable revenue. Why do investors care so much, and what's the difference?
Right. Well, let me ask you, because you're an expert at selling businesses. Do investors want to buy revenue that a company earned last year, or do they want to buy future revenue?
Well, they want to look at the past, but the past usually determines what the future is going to be.
Right, in most cases. But if they look at the past and say, well, you had a really good year, I'm not sure it's repeatable, then they're looking at what's revenue in the future.
Hmm.
Most investors I know care about future cash flow
Yeah.
because that's actually what's going to matter to them in realizing a return on their investment. A lot of times, businesses rely on what I call hero selling, which is that the owner or somebody who's driving most of the revenue, again, is doing it through sheer personality, or maybe they're doing it because they have really great personal relationships. They know if they pick up the phone and call a prospect, they're going to take their call. Or maybe they're just really good at hustling, but none of that's predictable. So
Hmm.
even if you could do that, and let's say you earn $5 million a year doing that, there's really no predictability to it. So this again comes back to, do you have a repeatable, predictable process that works under pressure? Unpredictable revenue is
Yeah.
actually a liability. It will reduce your valuation. Predictable revenue is an asset, and that adds to your multiple.
If someone needs better result, let's say in the next 90, 120 days, where can they find some quick wins?
Great question. And there's no easy answer to this. Depending on how long your sales cycle is, like 90 days is probably already baked in. But where I would encourage people to look, and one of the most underutilized parts of sales and something neglected by business owners, is client referrals.
Hmm.
Call up your clients, ask them what they like about your relationship, and then just ask, would it be okay if we brainstorm for a few minutes other people that you might know that might benefit from the relationship that you and I have? I guarantee if you do this, you'll get names. These deals will close easier. They'll take your phone call because they're coming through referrals. So if you're looking for quick wins, talk to your clients, see who they can introduce you to that they haven't already. Be proactive there, and that could open the door to make a nice bump in 90 days.
Nice. If a business owner wants to sell in 1 to 2 years, what's the one thing that they should be fixing right now when it comes to sales?
Well, I don't know if I have one thing. Can I give you a number? And it's kind of a
Go ahead.
step.
Sure.
Yeah. And if we need to condense it, I'll try to summarize. But one, as I talked about, make sure you have a process. Document everything that happens in a successful sale. Who you talked to, what questions were asked, what were the next steps, what were the red flags, map it all out. And then go to the next step, which is taking that to another level, which is define this sales process like IKEA instructions so that you could give it to anybody and they could figure out how to put it together. The next step would be, I'd say, qualify hard. Get rid of people that aren't good customers or are never going to buy from you. Make sure you train everybody on the sales and marketing team how to execute this process. And then the last thing I'd say is over the next 3 years, if you're looking to sell your business, pull yourself out of the day to day sales process.
Yeah.
Investors want to buy a machine. And this is what I'm basically describing what you need to build is build your sales machine so that you're not part of it. It'll make you very attractive when it comes time to sell.
And I have one more question. I think you already answered that. If you could fix one thing in a struggling business, what would it be? The one thing.
Yeah, well, my business is sales performance. There's an old saying that if you're a hammer, you see the world as a nail. So I probably always look at everything as a sales problem. But if I wanted to mix it up and go a little bit deeper in that, really examine the culture. A lot of times, employees are scared to fail. And sales is all about you're going to miss. A professional baseball player gets out 7 times out of 10 and they still can be a Hall of Famer. And so a lot of times salespeople are scared to lose deals. They're scared to fail, even though it's part of the business, which also means they play things really conservative. They don't ask the tough questions. They don't go to the next step. They let the buyer stay in control rather than being assertive and staying in control. So what I'd also look at is what's your culture? Enable people to take chances, enable people to be gutsy, enable people to be assertive but not aggressive. And that will not only fix your sales problem, but probably improve in a number of areas where the business could also be struggling.
Jason, thank you so much. This was very, very helpful. For business owners, if they're an individual owner or they have a team of people and they want to get a hold of you and get into some training, how would they do that?
Yeah. So, number of ways to get a hold of me. If you want to give me a call or text me, my phone number 360-608-9990. If you want to email me, jason.kelleghan@sandler.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, where I try to post really great sales content on LinkedIn. So you can certainly get a hold of me there. At the very least, connect with me and get some of the more in-depth insights that we discussed today.
And I think in talking to you, you train groups of people through the Sandler method, correct?
Yeah, I've trained both sales teams, usually under 20 people. More than 20, there's probably some better routes to go there. I also work with a lot of solopreneurs who are selling themselves. They went into business because they were really good at doing something, but they never really had any formal sales training. So I also work with them, and I have a few programs available for both types.
Well, great. Thank you for being with us, Jason.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. This is great.
Don't forget to hit subscribe. We talk every week about selling businesses, increasing your profit, and setting you up for retirement or your next move.